clients and counselors sometimes resist termination. Sometimes either the client or the counselor may not want the therapeutic process to come to an end. After all, it's a very close relationship that has developed over time. But it's important in terms of, as it relates to the client's reactions, that they understand that it's through this experience that they have grown, that they have the skills they need to be able to step out and overcome any barriers that exist. But in terms of some of the resistances that clients sometimes have as a result of the impending termination, is that the client might be fearful. They may be concerned over the loss of some of the gains that they've made. They might believe that if the therapeutic process ends, that too might end some of the growth and the positive strides that they've made. And sometimes the clients just are saddened by the loss of this healthy relationship. So it's important to realize that the ending of the therapeutic process is a time where not only the client but also the counselor experience issues related to termination. And sometimes there may be some issues relevant to resistance. I'm thinking about one client that I worked with in a therapeutic context, and the client had reached the goals and objectives, and we were planning the last session, and no matter how many times I scheduled and rescheduled, the client would not come back for the final session. And what I had to come to terms with was the fact that termination is not always done on the counselor's terms. Sometimes it's done on the client's terms. Sometimes for the client it's very difficult to have that final session. You know, it's for some clients it might be overwhelming. The client that I speak about, for him, it was his desire to just cut and move on rather than to have that final session of closure. So you can't force it as a counselor. You have to accept it for the way in which it's presented. And hopefully you have a client who's willing to meet and close the therapeutic process in a productive, pro-social kind of way. It's also important to understand that there are times when counselors also experience feelings of loss, as they may be expected if a positive, as may be expected in a positive cooperative relationship. And so it's nothing abnormal about a counselor feeling a sense of loss as well, especially when it's been a productive therapeutic alliance. And while there are difficult moments in therapy, there are also times where you laugh with the client. The client may say things or share experiences, and together you find it funny. So, or you know, there are times where you laugh together, or there are times when you are supporting a client through difficult situations. But whatever the case might be, it's also to recognize for us as counselors that we too may experience a feeling of loss. It's to be expected, particularly when we have positive cooperative relationships that have been formed and maintained over a specific amount of time. But in understanding that, we also must know that termination is a healthy part of the process. It speaks to clear boundaries, and it's the responsible thing that we must do as counselors. We know that we can't enable a client, and we can't be in their relationships at all times. Our role and our function is to get the client to a particular place and then allow the client to go on and use the skills and tools that have been learned in the therapeutic process. What I'd like for us to do is just take a moment to explore what our code of ethics says about termination. Our code of ethics says that termination and referral are necessary ingredients to the therapeutic process. Abandonment is prohibited. It says that rehabilitation counselors will not abandon or neglect clients in counseling. As rehabilitation counselors, we will assist in making appropriate arrangements for the continuation of treatment when necessary. And during interruptions, we too must be responsible for making sure that there is the continuation of services or treatment, especially during times of vacations. And also, we must provide for follow-up once termination is over. So this speaks to what is expected from us as counselors, particularly as it relates to abandonment. And when we as counselors can't provide the necessary services that our clients need, when it's needed because of whatever's going on in our own lives, we have a responsibility to pass the baton to another clinician who could best meet the needs of our consumer. With regard to an inability to assist clients, if a rehabilitation counselor determines that they are unable to meet the professional needs of their clients, they will avoid entering or immediately terminating a counseling relationship. So if we are unable to meet the needs or assist our clients for whatever reason, we have a responsibility to refer the client to another professional. And C, appropriate termination. Our code of ethics says that rehabilitation counselors will terminate a counseling relationship, securing client agreement when possible, and when it is reasonably clear that the client is no longer benefiting, when services are no longer required, or when counseling no longer serves the client's needs or interests, or when there is failure to pay fees according to Section J of this document. So these are the requirements under which we would provide appropriate termination of services. The other two ethical codes spoke of abandonment of services and the fact that abandonment is prohibited. And it also, the other code, the previous code, talks about our inability to assist the clients. And so this particular slide speaks to appropriate termination. And not only do we terminate when the client has benefited or reached the goals that have been established, we also will terminate when the client is not making progress, if they're not adequately participating in services, or when they are not paying the necessary fees that are expected or required. Additionally, we must make referral upon termination. It says here that rehabilitation counselors will be knowledgeable about referral resources. We must suggest appropriate alternatives to our clients. And if clients decline the suggested referrals, then we as rehabilitation counselors have the right to discontinue the relationship. And we know that as rehabilitation counselors, sometimes it's our responsibility to connect clients with the resources that exist beyond our office. There may be other resources that exist within the community that are needed to benefit the client. And it's important that we make the necessary referrals for the client so that they receive the maximum services that are needed. But we also must recognize that when they choose not to participate in the services that we deem appropriate and necessary, that as the counselor, we have the right to discontinue the relationship. But what I would do before discontinuing the relationship is arrive at an understanding about what is going on with the client. what is happening in terms of their hesitancy and their inability to follow through, what is happening with the resistance. So rather than just discontinuing the services, I would attempt to understand the resistance that exists within that client, and help them to work through any resistance that they are feeling that would preclude them from taking advantage of the needed services that exist. Follow-up is very important to the termination process. And in many ways, follow-up provides the client with some of the security that they might need to end the therapeutic process. And so with follow-up, our responsibility is to ensure that it's done in a time frame that not only meets the needs of the counselor but the client. So sometimes it's an opportunity to say to the client, you can call if services are needed. My doors are always open. You're welcome to come back on an as-needed basis. Or you might say within 3 months, I'll follow up with you to find out how services are going. Within 6 months, I'll do a second follow-up, and if all things are going well, we will permanently terminate. And so sometimes termination is done through successive approximations rather than abrupt, at the end of the final session. It might happen over from the 3rd, the 6th, and the 12th month of the therapeutic process. And as we know, sometimes as counselors, we have to provide a bridge to therapy, especially when as counselors we have a limited amount of time. When we know that we can only see clients for 6 sessions, and sometimes we realize that that the client might need services beyond the amount of sessions that are provided, we might sometimes have to provide a bridge to the therapeutic process that might be needed to assist the client to continue in their progression of growth. And one bridge that's really important is support groups. It's important to help clients to identify support networks, support groups that exist within their community. And sometimes I say to clients, if a support group doesn't exist, you can always create one. And a support group begins with 2 people. So sometimes it might mean the client and one other person. So it's important to assist our clients in receiving the follow-up services that they need, that we provide the bridge to therapy that the client may need once the therapeutic process has come to an end. And support groups is one of the best ways that we can assist clients in receiving that bridge. It's usually low cost or no cost, and not only do they receive resources from hopefully a trained professional, but they also receive services from other persons that are going through similar experiences. So basically, this concludes our discussion on follow-up, termination, and follow-up. We've covered a lot of information over the past 8 lectures. We have spent a great deal of time and discussion with regard to the counseling process and understanding our role and function as professionals. Just as a brief recap, I want to emphasize that when we are in stage 1 and we're establishing the therapeutic relationship, it's important that you pay particular attention to the alliance that you're establishing with the client. Research shows that the most important ingredient to behavior change with our client, it's not techniques, it's not therapeutic frameworks, it's the relationship. So first and foremost, I want to emphasize the critical importance of establishing the relationship. And through the relationship, no matter which tools and techniques you have, if you have a strong, solid, healthy, professional relationship with your client, just that relationship alone will bring about positive behavior changes. With regard to the relationship, you want to make sure that you focus on having strong rapport with the client, that you all have a shared sense of purpose with regard to the therapeutic process, that not only as the therapist you are vested in the services that the client is receiving, but also that the client is vested. You also want to make sure that the therapeutic purpose and the working alliance is something that's shared and agreed upon, that the client recognizes their role and function in working to overcome their barriers. And you want to make sure that as the counselor in establishing that working relationship or establishing the alliance, that you understand any pre-existing conditions, any systemic kinds of issues that exist for the client. As a brief review with regard to stage 2 and assessing the problem, it's important that we understand the client's subjective and objective realities from an affective perspective, understanding their emotions or the sources of their emotions, from a cognitive perspective where it deals with their thought processes, their misrepresentations of reality. We also want to make sure that we understand some of the behaviors that are a direct correlation to their emotional state and their cognitive state. And also systemically, we want to understand the various systems that exist within the client's lives and the ways in which those systems impact the client. So you in understanding and classifying the client and understanding and assessing the problems, you want to understand your client from an affective, cognitive, behavioral, and systemic frame of reference. The third stage of goal setting, just as a brief review, there are 3 key stages of goal setting. First, the counselor's inferential skills. As counselors, we have to infer, conceptualize, draw meaning. That's very, very important to working with clients. It's not always what they say to us. Sometimes it's some of the nonverbal information that we glean from the client's experience. The second stage of goal setting is differentiation between the ultimate goals, the intermediate goals, and the immediate goals. So whenever we're working with clients, be clear on what the goals are that they're presenting with. Understand the ultimate goal, but in order to meet the ultimate goal, you have immediate goals and intermediate goals. And the third stage of goal setting is teaching clients how to set goals that are attainable. If clients can learn to set goals that are attainable in the therapeutic context, it is far more likely that they will set goals in their personal and professional lives. And research shows that when people set goals, it enhances immensely the likelihood that they will attain, reach, and succeed the goals that they've established. Stage 4 is focused on initiating interventions. We talked about very important interventions that relates to the different aspects associated with our clients and with all human nature. We talked about interventions that focus on the affective or the emotions. We talked about interventions that focuses on the cognitive, the behavioral, and the systemic frames of reference. Most often than not, We need all of these interventions or aspects of them in our toolbox. We draw upon skills and tools that are most relevant based upon the clients that we're working with and their unique needs. We must take into consideration multiple variables at one time. Also, as it relates to initiating interventions and identifying appropriate interventions, we have to ask clients what solutions or remedies they've tried in the past. And we want to make sure that we relate interventions to the specific and unique needs of the client. And we want to help our clients to achieve more successful behaviors. And it's through the use of these various techniques that we're better able to help our clients to achieve more successful behaviors. And last but not least, planning, termination, and follow-up. We want to make sure that we terminate the therapeutic process in degrees. It's not an abrupt ending, it's a process. And that process begins when you start to see the client to make major behavior changes, the way in which they think, understand their circumstances, relate to others. When you start seeing positive changes, that is the point by which you introduce termination. Also, in terms of planning and termination and follow-up, you want to make follow-up appointments either 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 weeks, 3 weeks, or even 6 months in advance. And that's a wonderful safety net for our client. It helps them to feel that they're not abandoned. But it's also important to communicate to clients that therapeutic follow-ups are only needed if they deem it necessary. For some clients, they may not need follow-up. And so in this instance, give the client permission to cancel. Over these 8 sessions, we've talked a lot. I've enjoyed sharing with you this vast knowledge base about the counseling process. I hope and I trust that the information that I've shared with you will assist you to not only be better clinicians in working with clients, but that you can incorporate some of the information that I've shared with you from a very personal perspective. Corey, which is the author of a lot of counseling psychology books or counseling techniques books, what he talks about is that theories and you know, the information that we utilize as counselors are most meaningful when we can integrate it in our lives as counselors. This information just isn't specific to the clients that we work with. It is significant and symbolic to us as human beings and us as helpers, the us in helping professionals. So it's important that we too utilize some of these skills, strategies, and techniques to ensure that we are healthy service providers and that we can adequately and professionally meet the needs of those that we serve. I bid you well in your future pursuits as well as in your professional journey in working with persons with disabilities, whether it's in a vocational rehabilitation setting or in a mental health setting. The information that we've talked about over these 8 sessions or 8 lectures are transferable to a vast array of fields. So I encourage you to put this information into practice and to refer to it as often as you need to. Thank you for your time and attention, and all the best in your future pursuits.